Hawaii. When we think of Hawaii, we think of paradise. Coral sand beaches, coconut palms gently swaying in the ocean breeze, waterfalls, rainbows. Hawaii is all these things and many more. In fact, Hawaii has a deep, dark little secret, a secret the U.S. government wouldn't like you to know about.
The American agenda tonight, a most significant presidential apology. At the White House yesterday, President Clinton signed a formal letter of apology to the people of Hawaii. He was apologizing on behalf of the U.S. government for the government's involvement 100 years ago in removing the independent Hawaiian monarchy by force. And on the agenda tonight, Hawaiian identity. Native Hawaiians who say, "Give us back our country."
En el Hawái turístico, cientos de personas protestan y un presidente se disculpa. Y es que el gobierno de Estados Unidos, que legalmente considera a Hawái como el estado número 50 de la Unión, en realidad ha reconocido que hace más de un siglo cometió un despojo.
In 1993, the U.S. government passed a law. This was approved by the Congress, the Senate, and ultimately signed into law by President Clinton. And this was a confession, flat out. Public Law 103-150 was a confession. And in that confession, the United States admitted to all sorts of crimes, and it further admitted that the Hawaiian nation never relinquished its rights.
Si Hawái es el 50º estado de la Unión desde 1959, ¿cómo se entiende entonces que en 1993 Bill Clinton se disculpara por la usurpación de la que los habitantes originarios del archipiélago y sus descendientes fueron víctimas? Para entender esto, recurramos un poco a la historia. Hawái es un archipiélago conformado por 8 islas ubicadas en el centro del Océano Pacífico y que fueron pobladas por inmigrantes venidos de tierras lejanas, los que crearon una estructura social y política avanzada.
Native Hawaiians are Polynesians. They come from a land they call Kahiki, which is the homeland, and many believe that to be Tahiti or the Marquesas. And perhaps we're here as early as 100 BC, perhaps a little bit later than that. Two-way voyaging continued for many centuries, and then by about the 12th or 13th century, Hawaiians were living here pretty much on their own and developing a much more stratified society. And that led to the development of different island kingdoms here amongst the chain. So you had a kingdom of Kauai, a kingdom of Oahu, kingdom of Maui, and of Hawaii Island.
Su rey fundador, Kamehameha el Grande, unificó a las dispersas sociedades de ese enclave en el Pacífico. Con eso sus tierras empezaron a dar fruto y esto sirvió para abastecer a sus habitantes. Pero el reino hawaiano no estaría solo por mucho tiempo, porque por el mismo mar por donde llegaron los habitantes originarios del archipiélago, arribarían visitantes de otras tierras.
Contact with foreigners of European or American descent comes in 1778 with the arrival of Captain Cook. It is speculated that there may have been other encounters prior to that, but it's not documented.
El capitán James Cook, un explorador y navegante británico, estableció contacto con los habitantes del lugar. En 1794, otro explorador británico, George Vancouver, le regaló a la corte de Kamehameha una bandera de su país, la bandera de la Unión, como gesto de amistad del rey Jorge III. El reino hawaiano decidió incorporarla en su propia enseña, como acto de reconocimiento de dicha amistad. A pesar de la presencia extranjera, sobre todo británica, y de la variedad de etnias en el archipiélago, Kamehameha le dio a su reino una identidad propia que le ganó el reconocimiento mundial.
In 1843, the Kingdom of Hawaii was indeed recognized as an independent nation state, as a member of the family of nations, through treaties with the United States, Great Britain, and France, and I believe about 20 other nations of Europe. And this was meant to secure the sovereignty of the nation through those treaty agreements that were then made. And so from that point on, 1843, the Kingdom of Hawaii is indeed recognized as an independent nation state.
Además de consolidar su posición como nación soberana, el Reino de Hawái forjó una sociedad de ciudadanos con nacionalidad propia en un estado independiente.
In the 19th century, the term Hawaiian was an indicator of citizenship or membership to the Hawaiian Kingdom, which throughout the 19th century was an independent country, independent state. Beginning in 1843, the Hawaiian Kingdom was actually the first non-European territory in the world to become an independent and recognized state.
Como señal de ese reconocimiento, varios miembros de la familia real hawaiana viajaron por el mundo en giras oficiales en las que eran recibidos por repúblicas y monarquías como los representantes de un reino soberano. Entretanto, los inmigrantes de Occidente seguían llegando a Hawái. Ya desde comienzos del siglo XIX, unos cuantos colonos estadounidenses se habían establecido en el archipiélago.
So as the American settler population continued to grow, their interest in business continued to grow. They oftentimes were pressuring the monarchs, pressuring the government to develop things, or for the government to develop and the economy to develop in a way that these settlers would find most comfortable.
Estos grupos formaron una organización de terratenientes, en su mayoría estadounidenses, quienes controlaban principalmente la producción de caña de azúcar. Este poderío económico hizo que la influencia de estos colonos en los asuntos del reino fuera en aumento.
So when we get to 1893, by that time, these foreign settlers, many of them who were invested in the plantation economy, were very strong in their opinions about how the government should continue. And when Liliuokalani, who was the Queen of Hawaii in 1893, when she proposed to bring forward a new constitution, a group of 13 businessmen, calling themselves the Annexation Club and the Committee of Safety, they took it upon themselves to overthrow the Queen, or to remove her from the government. And they did this in conjunction, or with the approval, it would seem, of the U.S. Minister to the Hawaiian Kingdom, Minister Stevens. And so he was totally misrepresenting his position by essentially conspiring with this group to take over the Queen's government.
En su constitución, la reina Liliuokalani solo daba derecho a voto a los hawaianos considerados nativos. Los colonos temían perder su poderío político y económico. El 17 de enero de 1893, tropas de Estados Unidos desembarcaron en Hawái con el argumento de que era necesario proteger dichos derechos. La reina Liliuokalani fue arrestada y retenida en el Palacio Real de Iolani, desde donde se vio obligada a abdicar debido a la superioridad militar de los invasores. Se trataba del punto culminante de la campaña para anexar Hawái a Estados Unidos. Los conspiradores aprovecharon el fin de la monarquía para tomar control del archipiélago, creando la llamada República de Hawái. A pesar de ello, los habitantes de la isla no aceptaron esa imposición y se pusieron en acción.
This is when the people of Hawaii gather together in a couple of huis, or groups, that protest against annexations, with a petition asking that the United States recognize that the people of Hawaii who have signed this petition do not want to be a part of the United States, do not wish to be annexed. And we believe that some 38,000 people in total signed these petitions out of a Native Hawaiian population that was close to 40,000.
La petición no tuvo éxito. El 12 de agosto de 1898, en una ceremonia frente al Palacio Iolani, residencia de los monarcas hawaianos, se arrió la bandera del archipiélago y se izó en su lugar la de Estados Unidos. La anexión de Hawái a Estados Unidos trajo consigo un proceso de americanización de la sociedad local. Este proceso incluyó la imposición de un sistema educativo que marginaba los valores locales, reemplazándolos por el idioma de los colonos.
In 1896, under the authority of the Republic of Hawaii, a law was passed that stated that all public school instruction must take place in English. So they didn't outright ban Hawaiian, but in effect they did, because they said to everyone, you must learn English, you must use English, and only English in your schools. And so parents became much more reluctant to use Hawaiian language in their homes. And certainly in the schools, many children were reprimanded for using Hawaiian language when they were expected to be using English.
Is when the U.S. took over our education. There it went. They took our language. They took our land. They took our identity. And they really succeeded in taking our will to live.
Al mismo tiempo, Estados Unidos aprobaba una ley que establecía quién era y quién no era hawaiano.
Around 1920, you start to see this legislation being passed in U.S. Congress that kind of begins to define legally through U.S. law what is considered a Native Hawaiian. In that bill, U.S. congressional law, you have, for the first time, this understanding of blood quantum, that Native Hawaiians, right, are legally defined as those that possess half native blood, right, or 50% native blood. So you can really start to see American racial logic being institutionalized within Hawaii, and that lasts for a very long time, even till this day, right? These terms, Native Hawaiian or Hawaiian, are now defined through U.S. law within the context of blood quantum.
1/32 of drop is still Hawaiian. But they said, oh, according to their law, you have to have 50%. That's bullhead. Yeah, they can get lost. We don't need them coming over here and telling us what to do and what not to do. So, as far as blood quantum is concerned, I'd say they committed genocide. Big time, big time.
Este proceso de americanización e imposición de reglas ajenas a la cultura local de Hawái tuvo una de sus expresiones más evidentes en la violación de las tierras sagradas de los hawaianos.
That place they call Walmart on Keomoku Street and Makaloa Street, it just happened that my family had the ownership papers to 8.5 acres, and that's where they put their store on. They found 66 sets of bones that were buried on that property grounds, and it took 7 years to get through all the mitigations and all whatever for us to put the bones back in the ground. And all we're trying to do is respect our own ancestors. You know what would be really interesting? If some of us went up to Punch Bowl, where the American veterans are buried, and go up there and tear out some of those graves and put up a fancy building.
Estados Unidos no se conformó con la anexión de Hawái, la supresión de la lengua local o la violación de las tierras sagradas de los habitantes originarios del archipiélago. Ellos querían la estatidad. Se trataba de convertir a Hawái en un nuevo estado de la Unión. El 12 de marzo de 1959, el Congreso estadounidense votó por una abrumadora mayoría a favor de convertir a Hawái en el estado número 50 de la Unión.
It's made official at the White House. President Eisenhower congratulates the new congressional representatives of Hawaii. It for the simple ceremonies that remake the geography of the United States, adding the 50th and southernmost state with a land area of 6,500 miles and a population of 600,000.
Hawaii becomes a state of the United States in 1959. Of course, if annexation was illegal and overthrow was illegal, then many believe statehood is also an illegal event. So you certainly continue to have debate here in Hawaii as to whether or not Hawaii is a state. But officially, according to the United States, in 1959.
No resulta extraño entonces que en 1993 el entonces presidente Bill Clinton promulgara una resolución en la que su país se disculpaba por el despojo al que habían sido sometidos los habitantes originales del archipiélago, reconociendo que ellos no habían renunciado a sus derechos o aceptado la abolición de su reino de manera voluntaria.
You don't need to be a lawyer, really, to understand. If the criminal admits to committing a crime against you, and further admits that you never relinquished your rights, i.e. your property was stolen and you never relinquished your rights to the property, you don't need to be a lawyer to understand that according to that the Hawaiians have one of the best claims, if not the best claim, for independence once again.
So that bill really should have apologized to the national population. But that wordage of saying national population would kind of throw off, right, the political intent of that bill, to kind of sidestep, right, or kind of erase that history that it was a kingdom.
Why did the Americans do it? That was the first question I asked when I heard about the apology bill. It was an intent to defraud the Hawaiian nation, the Hawaiian people even further.
La disculpa del gobierno de la Casa Blanca fue seguida por varias resoluciones propuestas por el senador de Hawái, Daniel Akaka, para realizarse el año 2000 a más tardar. Su intención era conseguir una legislación que les otorgara a los nativos hawaianos reconocimiento federal, la misma estrategia usada con los indios originarios en Estados Unidos. En 2009, el Congreso promulgó la llamada Ley de Reorganización del Gobierno Nativo de Hawái, conocida como Ley Akaka. Según esta legislación, los descendientes de los habitantes originarios del archipiélago podrán formar un gobierno local, pero dentro del sistema federal estadounidense, no pudiendo reclamar los derechos que perdieron antes del derrocamiento de la monarquía en 1893, ni su soberanía como nación.
And I believe the people that were involved in the Akaka bill that's trying to continue to deprive us were absolutely on the track of imposterating our claims. And at the end of it all, first of all, naming us Native Hawaiians, which we're not Native, we're nationals, okay? So imposteration started, not knowing this. Then the imposteration for Native Hawaiians were coming. And then the next step would be that the imposteration was that they now becoming the Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander Asian Foundation. And most of our people don't know this yet.
We're on a different boat here. A lot of people like to compare us with the American Indian, per se. Well, in our situation, we're fortunate enough to have a government that actually had the treaties with the U.S. that actually have never been dissolved. So, you know, if anything, it'll show America's true colors, if they want to be a good big brother or not.
Durante más de un siglo, Estados Unidos se ha dedicado a consolidar la imagen de Hawái como un lugar de interés turístico. Detrás de esa máscara de paraíso se ha escondido un panorama de usurpación y despojo que motivó el surgimiento de corrientes en pro de la soberanía que han reclamado su derecho a ser una nación independiente.
Remember all the stolen lands, this Hawaiian Superman is wanting it back. Give back the land, Captain America. Give back the land, Captain America. Give back the land, Captain America. It's all right. Give back the land. Governed by your policies, all we want is sovereignty. It's so hard to pay rent. This is for the aunties sleeping under palm trees. and living in chance. It's a shame.
Los soberanistas han empezado un proceso de rescate de su idioma y su arte, mientras que las universidades investigan la historia de Hawái, desempolvando viejas ediciones de diarios del siglo XIX escritos en la lengua originaria del lugar. La resolución de disculpa dio más fuerza a los movimientos soberanistas, los que empezaron a plantearse la posibilidad de recuperar su propio gobierno, el mismo que existía antes de la anexión de 1893. Uno de estos intentos es el llamado Gobierno Legítimo de Hawái.
My name is Henry Noah. Okay, I'm the elected Prime Minister for the reinstated lawful Hawaiian government. The lawful Hawaiian government was formed March 13, 1999, and it actually reinstated the former government offices that was in existence prior to January 17, 1893, the day that we got overthrown. Our government was overthrown. So what has happened since that day till now is that basically there was actions taken by the conspirators, who are the United States government, to try to justify or even validate their actual existence here and their authority that they exercise here in Hawaii.
El llamado Gobierno Legítimo de Hawái, que tiene más de una década de vida, no es reconocido legalmente por Estados Unidos, a pesar de lo cual no es simplemente un ejercicio simbólico de rescate de la soberanía del archipiélago, sino que tiene una estructura propia, que legisla y gobierna bajo reglas muy precisas.
We have a House of Nobles, a House of Representatives, and an executive branch, which includes Prime Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of the Interior, and the Minister of the Treasury. Currently, we are engaging in land reclamations.
We realized that we would have to be able to get our people, to unite under this government. So we've done a lot of educational programs to get our own people to understand. Listen, the government still exists. It's been in abeyance. It's been absent all these years. All we needed to do was put it back, bring back the government, which is what we are able to accomplish. The second thing that we educate our people to is now we need to put power to the government. And the only way that can happen is if we as a people participate in that government and begin to build the government, the functional bodies of that government, the executive, the legislative, the judicial branches, all of the departments that come to function a government has to be reset, of which we have actually accomplished those things.
En su convención legislativa anual, conocida como Manukau Kanawai, el gobierno legítimo de Hawái, con sus delegados de todas las islas, se reunió para discutir asuntos relacionados con la entrega de tierras, la estructura de su gobierno y para juramentar a nuevas autoridades.
In January 1893, our government was removed. On March 13, 1999, we, the Kanakamoli people from across the entire island chain, came together on Oahu, island of Oahu, and we initiated a process to reinstate the former offices of that government.
It's been a long process, so from my understanding, the Hawaiian government has actually, the reinstated lawful Hawaiian government, has progressed to a point where now things are going to start to come to exist.
Who gave us that right? It's inherent in every Kanaka Maoli, and it's an obligation on that individual's part to fix an injustice, to understand who you are, and you have the perfect right to step forward and try to fulfill that obligation.
We've been talking about how we're going to do things, but now we're applying ideas that we've been bringing up at the table at the Mauna Kea Kanawais for the last 38 conventions, and it's gonna pan out pretty good, I think.
It's been a long time coming to get to this point where we're at today, where we can actually reclaim land and issue awards. We did a lot of preparations to get to this point, and now that we're actually here, it's a little overwhelming, exciting.
We have built a case that it's hard to argue with, you know. So we know we're dealing with the de facto government backed by the United States, and so we're up against some heavy hitters. We know that. So our case has to be solid.
There has never been a time that I know in our history that we have not worked to regain what is rightfully ours. Say this to all those that have dedicated their time. Mahalo. Because you cannot get a nation if you don't put the work into it. We're at that stage where tomorrow, I believe, and this weekend, we're going to take some historical steps.
We have legislated resolutions in our Constitution. We brought our Constitution to modernity from 1893, and brought it forward to modernize it. That was archaic. A lot of the language was archaic. We had to modernize it, first of all, so we did as little as possible. That's another thing that happened, was that the legislators who were elected were charged with creating a constitutional convention in the year 2000. One, to modernize the Constitution, and two, really to decide what style of government to implement.
El poder legislativo del gobierno legítimo de Hawái está dividido en 7 distritos que tienen un representante y un noble, de acuerdo a la tradición originaria del archipiélago. Aquí participan jóvenes y ancianos sin distinción alguna.
I guess the way I look at it is being ahead of the curve, in a sense. You know, there are a few other members of the government itself that may be my age or younger. However, I guess what it comes down to is, well, being called old for my age for some time. I know there's a lot of folks my age who have a basic understanding of the issue. I guess in a sense I find myself ahead of the curve in comprehending the moral obligation that accompanies, you know, the historic facts.
Now you're going to see more of our generation getting involved with Olelo Hawaii and moving our culture and getting involved with the politics, just in different pathways, I think. And then on the flip side, I think outside of the Native Hawaiians, within our education and how they view us, it has become more of a sport, I think. And Hawaii is a cool place to come and work for 2 years and get their thrills, and then they move on, kind of.
Why I'm doing what I'm doing here today, and this is the day we waited for a long time, and we've always said it only on God's time where we do this. Well, today is God's time, where we're gonna put the people back on the land. It's this very spot, 13 years ago, Uncle Robert and I sat in his car, and we asked God to help us. And the rest, our Prime Minister at that time was
organizer of our hui. Everybody was waiting for us to bring one Kanaka to that meeting. This is when we was going to put the government together. And we asked God, right here at this very spot where we sit, help us. Help us. You know, why am I so elated today? So in Hawaiian, we say the word for being elated is ha'ole. Ha'ole nui, happy, very, very happy. Because we're getting to put our people back on the land that the U.S. had come through deceit or whatever you call it, took our people and drove us to be destitute.
And the problem that we're having is that they're not fulfilling their obligation. They're continuing to ignore, deny us. And that's one of the most difficult things when we're the victims of this hypocrisy, but the people on the payroll continue denying us access to our lands that they say they gave us all back, which we never received yet, to the monies that they say they're giving us, we don't even receive. And this has been going on for 120 years.
Hawaiian nationals know that there is a process that we're conducting or we're providing to reclaim lands, national lands.
Durante la convención del gobierno legítimo de Hawái, el primer ministro hizo entrega de tierras para un grupo de 10 personas, para quienes esa ceremonia simple significa el comienzo de una nueva etapa en sus vidas. Debido a que dichas tierras se encuentran en zonas vírgenes creadas por la actividad volcánica, en realidad no pertenecen a nadie. Son terrenos baldíos sobre los cuales 10 colonos y sus familias van a construir su futuro.
Yes, sir, no man change your plans. Don't wanna be a fireman. I wanna get
demonstrating to them that this is our claim to our lands and that we decide what happens on our land. Yes. Right? Again, 1, 2, 3, oh, 1, 2, 3.
Reality, I'm finally seeing what I want to see. You gave me what I needed, something to believe in. Court fees, divorce, see no strings attached. Now I got a second chance.
Well, now we have, okay, a land. So instead of going far up the hill, miles away from home, now we can just walk out here and home.
E te mea te hau muoro. Ane o tō te atua no te hapatauturi a tātou te taime. Maururu, maururu, amen.
Amen. Well, this one lot, this is for the community center where the community can meet. You know, you can come and have the kupuna, the elders do crafts, have the younger ones learn etiquette, you know, Hawaiian etiquette, learn how to make medicines, learn how to do medical techniques, learn language, skills, and you know, anything that the community needs, any kind of education as a whole, they can come to this hotspot. And then of course, tourists who are walking through, they can always visit. Anybody who wants to know, they're welcome to come.
Una de las actividades del gobierno legítimo de Hawái es el combate a la extrema pobreza que existe en el archipiélago. La imagen de prosperidad con sus tiendas de artículos de lujo y automóviles último modelo en el estado más caro de Estados Unidos contrasta con la pobreza en la que viven cientos de personas. En el censo del año 2010, el 33% de las familias con hijos menores de 5 años vivía en estado de pobreza. La imagen de postal de Hawái contrasta entonces con la realidad cotidiana de los nativos del archipiélago.
What you see here around me is a homeless village that was established in 2009. This is adjacent to Waianae Pokai Bay Boat Harbor. The boat harbor is right here. This campsite is right here. What these people have been able to do is stay out of the public parks, which their presence in occupying public parks seems to interfere with the tourists. And the government does not like interference with cash flow in any sort. So this area here is called Pokai Bay. And we're going into the bushes adjacent to the harbor. And this, I heard that this is where a majority of the homeless people that got ousted from the beaches have relocated to this area here. We've had a history of these homeless people. It has been increasing, large numbers.
I came here in 2010. In 2009 is actually when we became houseless. I will not say homeless because we are not homeless. Hawaii is our home, this Aina is our home. We became houseless in 2009. I was a greenhorn at it, only knew how to go camping, and that's what I took. And from there, we hit recession back in 2009. 7 incomes, 5 loss, couldn't continue our home, gave up our home back then. We began living amongst the houseless people, and we learned a lot. And then from there, we got swept in at Ulihava back in March 2010. Most of these people that's here, started from here, from this camp going that way, have been here for a while. Where this tree is, right here, this berry tree is, there's an opailua in there, but they're cleaning up. They're trying to clean up and stuff, yeah. A lot of us we understand that we are going to get swept, so a lot of us are doing spring cleaning right now.
So the people who come down and do the sweep and sweep everybody out of here, is it police department or the sheriff's department?
Basically what happens, basically what happens is, okay, from what we understand and what was told to me was that the state is not in the business to do sweeps. But the state will go ahead, because of the lease, they have to go ahead and do a lot of the, what is required by law, which is to clean out the land before they lease it. Right now, if they were to sweep us, nobody has nowhere to go. We don't know where to go. The next where?
Mauka, to the mountains.
To the mountains.
Pero la negación de sus derechos, la pobreza y la marginación no son los únicos problemas a los que se enfrentan los hawaianos. Sobre ellos se cierne una amenaza que podría poner en peligro su existencia misma: la guerra. Para Estados Unidos, Hawái no solo ha sido un archipiélago de interés comercial o político, sino que estas islas en medio del Pacífico son parte de la estructura estratégico-militar de este país.
On August 16, 1898, 4 days after Hawaii became a part of our nation, the United States Army became an important part of the island community. Since then, under the impact of 2 world wars and the Korean conflict, the Army in Hawaii has expanded enormously. Today, the Hawaiian Islands represent a multi-million-dollar base of operations for American defense forces in the Pacific Ocean area.
En realidad, Estados Unidos descubrió la importancia estratégico-militar de Hawái mucho antes de que sus colonos lograran la anexión del archipiélago en 1893.
Major General John Schofield arrived on Oahu in 1872. His mission was to find a military use for the island's seaports. General Schofield found the seaports were perfect for the growing United States Navy, and that the land between the Waianae and Ko'olau mountain ranges was ideal for ground forces.
En efecto, la guerra entre Estados Unidos y España por el control de Puerto Rico, Guam y las Filipinas aceleró la usurpación para 1898. Hawái era un bastión crucial para las campañas militares norteamericanas. La base de Pearl Harbor, que fue construida en 1900, se convirtió en la principal base naval de Estados Unidos en el Pacífico. Durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial, en la mañana del 7 de diciembre de 1941, la Fuerza Aérea Japonesa puso en evidencia la vulnerabilidad de Hawái.
I was 9 years old when the Pearl Harbor happened, when Japan came by and bombed Pearl Harbor. That was a very memorable day for me, particularly. I didn't find out the destruction after everything was said and done, when I went home to my grandparents' home, I seen all the holes in the roof where the planes came over and strafed.
Esa presencia militar de Estados Unidos en Hawái implica un peligro constante para la existencia misma del archipiélago.
Hawaii is a military outpost. It's got every branch of the U.S. military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and there are unknown amounts of nuclear weapons. You've got nuclear submarines, you've got nuclear aircraft carriers, you've got nuclear silos with intercontinental ballistic missiles. Those missiles are directed at targets all around the world. There are literally billions of people under threat from the missiles that are based here in Hawaii. Literally, right here is Pacific Command, which is one of the keystones, one of the major bulwarks of the American empire. The Pacific Command, in its own mind, has jurisdiction over half of the world. This includes China, Russia, Asia, all of the Pacific, South America, Central America. This is a huge section of the human population that has nuclear missiles and nuclear weapons that are directed at them from Hawaii. If we were to enter into a third world war, and if nuclear weapons are launched, there is absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Hawaii will be majorly targeted by America's enemies, specifically China and Russia, directed at Hawaii because of American presence. But it's a significant number, and rest assured there's no question that if there is a nuclear war and missiles are sent here, there will be so many missiles that there will be nothing left of Hawaii.
La importancia del aparato bélico estadounidense en Hawái no solo es estratégica. En realidad, su economía depende en gran medida de la estructura militar de Estados Unidos. Según el prestigioso Instituto RAND de Investigación de la Defensa, la economía militar en Hawái constituye al menos el 18% de su Producto Interno Bruto, más de $12,000 millones anuales.
Military-industrial complex is the #1 economy here in Hawaii, entity of our economy. Everybody thinks tourism is #1, but I believe that the military-industrial complex is actually at the top, if not the two tied together. So that's what drives our economy. So it's very difficult to even have the discussion about withdrawing some of that military presence because our economy is so dependent on it for so many people.
En efecto, Estados Unidos aprovecha los valles, montañas y mares como campo de entrenamiento para sus tropas. Al mismo tiempo, Estados Unidos ofrece el territorio hawaiano a tropas extranjeras para su capacitación bélica. Esta dinámica ha ocasionado durante años graves daños al medio ambiente del archipiélago. Según la organización Pacific Health Dialogue, en Hawái existen 798 zonas contaminadas por la presencia militar de Estados Unidos. La contaminación se debe principalmente al deterioro de municiones, la presencia de mercurio y plomo, napalm, desechos radioactivos y combustibles no radiactivos. En 2008, el coronel estadounidense Howard Killian admitió que existía uranio enriquecido en Hawái, pero afirmó que este no constituía un riesgo para los habitantes del archipiélago. Al igual que en el caso de las protestas por la recuperación de su autonomía, los hawaianos se oponen a la presencia militar de Estados Unidos porque atenta contra los deseos de neutralidad de los ciudadanos del archipiélago.
The military absolutely needs to go. I mean, for one thing, it compromises our neutrality. You know, we made it a point to stay out of the rest of the world's conflicts because, I mean, who has a problem with the Hawaiians, for one thing? I mean, from my personal perspective, ideally what I think it should be is that Hawaii should be a neutral buffer zone between the Chinese power and the American power.
Military buildup here is certainly something that's discussed a lot by many people. It's almost become so normal, though, that I think some people don't realize how prominent the military is in Hawaii.
Pobreza, alto costo de vida, alienación cultural y la amenaza militar son consecuencia directa de la presencia de Estados Unidos en Hawái. A pesar de ello, quienes han decidido reclamar lo que les quitaron a sus ancestros no están dispuestos a rendirse.
My efforts for being involved with this process of reinstatement is I'm trying to get back to being a lawful person. The law that you see here today is a charade. It's a big old Hollywood production. That's what is going on. And Hollywood does real well in fabricating identities and whatever else they do.
I guess what it comes down to is, well, for me personally, having been aware of the wrongs that were perpetrated, well over a century ago, part of it has to do with, for me, making sure that, you know, that the torch stays lit.
I think you're going to get mixed feelings for sure, but it's hard. I think that as this movement grows, there's going to be that shift, and I hope instill some sort of hope of I can participate in something that is a gift to my generations to come, and it can be not in that space of anger, I think.
We got the body in place. We're going to demonstrate that we're real here in Hawaii, and now we're going to take this realness to the world and let them know this is why we're executing to reclaim what is rightfully ours, which is sovereign authority and reclaiming our land, putting substance to our sovereignty process.
Oh, I see it, free, independent Hawaii once again will be a reality because we're going to make that possible through law. And the military, the U.S. military can leave and just go back to North America and follow their rules, exert their rules on their land.
Remember all the stolen lands, this Hawaiian Superman is wanting it back. Give back the land, Captain America. Give back the land, Captain America. Give back the land, Captain America. Please, give back the land. Governed by your policies, all we want is sovereignty. It's so hard to pay rent. And this is for the aunties sleeping under palm trees and living in tents. It's a shame Hawaiians are moving away. Leave the ocean for promotion, better wages. I think it's safe to say that Hawaii is doing better in Nevada, Las Vegas. Captain America, don't mean to sweat you, but you met your man. Remember all the stolen lands, this Hawaiian Superman is taking it back. Taking back the land, Captain America, now. We're taking back the land, Captain America, right now. We're taking back the land, Captain America, now. We're taking back the land, that's God's plan. To live life, and living is free. Stay high, and rolling with me. We'll live life where you're supposed to be. Stay high, in Hawaii. Mahalo for giving us that.